Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depends on where you are. We want to talk about the next wave of innovation. Arihant briefly talked about what they are doing in the fintech space, particularly in the loan origination and whatnot. But a lot of you may have heard about generative AI. If that term is not known to you, I'm sure you may have heard of something called ChatGPT, which kind of break the barrier, the kind of what we call an iPhone moment. But we want to, next 30, 40 minutes, I just wanted to walk you through in terms of how this generative AI is going to transform the way we do business, transform the way we live as an individual, whether it's in our own role, what you are doing on a day-to-day basis, or your company, how that company will get impacted using what we call the generative AI. With that, my name is Ritesh Vajariya. I work at Amazon Web Services out of New York. My role, as we mentioned earlier, about business development for generative AI. Fun fact, just to know me, some of the things, been in industry for 20 plus years. I stopped counting after 20 years, after I lost a lot of my hair. Been speaking about AI globally, doesn't matter whether it's US, India, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Europe, pretty much covered 8 or 9 different countries in the last 6 months. Been a mentor to many of the individuals. I'm a husband, I have a wife, 2 boys, live in the New York area. With that, you don't want to know about me, you want to talk about generative AI. So let's get to the agenda straight away. What we want to cover, the hype, because everyone is hearing about it, and then you probably don't know how you would implement it on your day-to-day life. So that's where we would sort of deconstruct the hype. Then we will dive into the reality, where actually once the hype dies is when the reality comes in. And we'll briefly talk about the future, what that future would look like when we are looking at generative AI, how you can implement, how we can use it, what kind of tools available for you to go and consume it. All right, with no waste of time, the hype beyond the buzz. Let's get started on the generative AI. So overall, if I quote McKinsey is a global consulting firm, and they do a lot of research in terms of the economics. They have forecasted, right? It's not a real number, but a forecasted number that generative AI will have an impact on the economy anywhere between 2.6 trillion to 4.4 trillion, right? And then the question is, when we say GDP, I'm sure most of you are aware of gross domestic product being GDP, but it's a yearly output of a particular economy. If I give an example of UK's annual GDP is around 3.3 trillion. Now, if we are looking at the generative AI impact on the economy, is going to have almost double, close to a double the size of what UK is producing as a gross domestic product. With that, you may question that, okay, it will have an impact, but where exactly that impact is going to lie? And again, this is not me saying, don't take my word, but take McKinsey's word. It's going to have an impact on customer operations. So any customer operation, customer interaction you all are doing, we all are doing, all the companies are doing, will have a global impact. Sales and marketing. Most of you have interacted in one or the other way in the sales or the marketing aspect of a product. Now that will have a dramatic impact on how that sales and marketing would be driven using generative AI. The other is ripe for particularly transformation is the software engineering. I mean, I've been in IT technology field for over the last 20 years. I have been a software engineer in my, I would say, past life. But how that software is going to get written is going to have a complete dramatic impact using generative AI. And particularly, last but not least, is in the form of research and development. How research is being done, whether it's in terms of the healthcare research, pharmaceutical research, drug development, protein folding research, all of that research will have a major impact using generative AI. But again, I'm just listing down this 4. based on what McKinsey is predicting, in my opinion, it's going to be much, much more beyond these four categories of what McKinsey is predicting. So you may ask that, okay, what industry we are going to have that impact? I mean, customer support is a broad spectrum. Customer support applies to any industry, but which particular industry is ripe for the transformation so that I can put myself into that industry and I'll reap the benefit of generative AI, right? So there are primarily three industries are going to have that transformation moment. One is banking and financial. Arihant briefly talked about earlier about the loan processing and the mortgage and another aspect of it. But banking and financial overall BFSI industries is a very wide. Whether we are looking at your consumer banking, the private banking, the investment banking, whether we are looking at the financial aspect of it, whether we are looking at the insurance aspect of it, it's all right for the disruption. The next industry is on the healthcare and life science, or HCLS. These industries have been, I would say, not adopting new generation of technology compared to banking. But definitely this industry is going to see that change. And we'll look at a couple of examples in incoming slides of what those changes would look like when it comes to the industry. And the high tech is more of an industry where if you are in the business of manufacturing the next iPhone or the next Android phone or the next iPad or next tablets, we'll see a complete change on how that is going to get manufactured, complete change in how it's going to get deployed from a technology point of view, and so forth. So the question is, what is this generative AI, right? I mean, everyone is talking about this, but can you dump it down? I mean, I have seen a lot of things, I have heard a lot of things. So overall, when we are looking at generative AI, and then I've been in this field for last 2 years, it's still a lot of time when we say somebody has spent 2 years in generative AI. It's all about a content to begin with. And I'm sure some of you may have seen pictures like this over on the internet where somebody is creating a dramatic version of a picture. In this scenario, these two women, maybe on the silver or on the golden. It's this picture of a woman is not like a photoshopped or somebody hand draw it. It's created using generative AI. The motorcycle and the man next to the motorcycle is also generated. It's not like somebody took a picture and posted it online. Or the picture of a bee, what you see in the center, is also a generated image. And it's literally the amount of time it takes to generate that image is few seconds. So technically, if you are in the creative field where you have to create a logo, you have to generate some sort of an image for a marketing or for some creative component, you do not need to use the softwares which are like you spend a week or 2 weeks to come up with a logo or an image like this. You simply put a text prompt that create an image of a woman sitting on steps, wearing a golden suit, and the generative AI, the model will generate it for you. So the question is, what exactly that is? What exactly it is doing when we say generative AI? It's actually allowing the model or the computers, if I dump it down, to generate the net new content which is modeled after the existing data. So what does it mean is this large, gigantic models. And when we say models, it's a computation algorithm at the end of the day. That algorithm is trained for weeks or months. And when you say trained, it's like I have a dog at home, a golden retriever. When we got the dog, he did not knew a lot of things. Now, today, if I tell him to sit, he will sit. If I tell him, let's go walk, he'll jump with me. So sort of in a way where how we train the dog. Similarly, we train the model, the machine, computer machine. But training a dog is a very small thing. Yes, it does take time, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month. But once that dog is trained, it follows your instruction. Similarly, when the machine is trained, and it takes time to train the machine, It takes few weeks to few months, in some case over a year or more. That machine or the model knows what to do based on how you have trained that model. So in this scenario, this gigantic models are trained with a lot of text. So internet is full of text, right? Wherever you go on the internet, you read something, it's all text most of the time. There are few images. So models are trained with those images, with those texts. And then based on that input, what has been given to the model is generating a new output. That is what it is at the end of the day, right? That is what generative AI is. But the model is smart enough to come up with something new, creative of what we are asking it to do. So with that, beyond the hype of that generative AI, which all industry we think will have an impact? My statement, I'm putting on recording line, but it will have an impact on every industry. Doesn't matter which industry you are in, as long as there is a technology involved in that industry, you will see the impact with generative AI. Whether it's on the retail, education, we talked about healthcare and financial, but the manufacturing, the automobile, doesn't matter. Everyone will have an impact. Everyone's job will have an impact. I tell you this. If not today, it may be in 5 years, but that is, mark my words, since it's recording line. So the reality is how we will see that impact in coming weeks to coming years. To begin with, it would be what I would call an AI assisted capabilities. And when you say AI assisted capabilities, AI is not going to take over our job. Okay, if that is what you heard so far or inferred so far, AI will not take that job. But what AI will do in this case, particularly the generative AI, is going to help you as an individual, you as a company, to do that work better or more efficient. And that efficiency is going to gain the productivity. So the earlier example of somebody who can create a logo in a week, now you can create that logo in, let's say, 1 hour instead of a week. If you get that logo in 1 hour instead of 1 week, that means suddenly you are able to utilize that logo sooner. If you are able to generate a website instead of a week, in an hour or a day, suddenly you are able to launch that website sooner. That means your cycle has shortened from 1 week to 1 day to do something. That means your productivity overall is going to improve, or your time to market will improve as a whole. So that boils down to what all use cases will get impacted, or what you can do with this new way of doing generative AI. So there are multiple modality, what we call it here in the generative AI domain. It's called text modality, image modality, video modality, sound modality, and so forth. And there are multiple use cases across each of that functionality, particularly when we are looking at text, because which is what we interact as a human on a daily basis, and image at certain extent depends on the type of a role you are in or the things we want to do. But imagine a scenario where you are an investment banker and you've been asked to identify, go and look at all the top 1,000 companies and tell me which companies where I should invest the money into, right? Now, when we look at those 10,000 companies or 1,000 companies, doesn't matter. Each company, most of them here, we are talking about public companies. That means each public company will have some sort of an annual report, right? They are bound to, government asks them to do it. And each annual report will have anywhere between 40,000 to 50,000 words on an average. Now, if you ask me to read 40,000, 50,000 words, probably it will take me about 20, 30 minutes. But speed reader might be able to do it in 15 minutes. Now, if I ask this model to read this and give me a summary of each of this annual report, because at the end of the day, I'm an investment research. I don't need to know everything about what's there in the annual report. I just need to know the summary of it. Now, this model can generate the summary in few seconds. So compare that with 1,000 company, we are looking at 3,000 seconds or 5,000 seconds at best spent in generating the summary. And then instead of spending 20 minutes, 30 minutes per each report, I'm spending total 30 minutes, maybe 1 hour or 2 hours at best, in reviewing all the 1,000 companies' report because it's a summarized version. Now that means I, as an investment research or research analyst, I have shrunk my time from weeks of research to a day of research at best. And then based on that, if I want to dive deeper into, let's say, Google, because Google is very interesting company, I can go and read the Google report separately, but I don't need to read all the 1,000 companies report just because it's in my list. So this is just a summary aspect of what we are looking at. If you are thinking of email, you all receive hundreds of email every day. But as of today, probably 1% to 2% emails are generated. Rest of the emails are written, handwritten. Now, if you are in the marketing field and if you want to send out a blast or a copy created for individual user based on certain aspect of a changes what you want to make, that email generation can be done straight away by asking this generative AI models that, okay, go and write an email where I'm promoting a new course. This course will have an XYZ value. It's going to run for next 4 weeks. And that course will eventually allow this attendee to learn about AI and machine learning and then so many things, right? So now I don't need to, as a human, I'm a techie, I'm not a creative writer. I don't need to come up with a mechanism of how to write in a particular tone where it's a marketing tool where I'm sort of asking students to join my courses and so forth, right? That has been taken care by the model. So that is less work for me. It's a better output because the model knows English language better than me because English was my second language. Because when I learned English was probably from my 6th grade or 7th grade onwards, right? So that is how the models are sort of helpful in terms of creating new content. And similar space, we saw few images, but the same applies into your image generation, whether it's 2D image, 3D image. You may want to have your own templatized image, right? That you want to create a blog post, but the blog post will have a particular template. And the image, what you generate in the blog post, you want to have a certain enhancement and the style you want to adopt, which you want to transfer into the image. So there are many, many things. One thing I want to call out is a presentation or a slide generation. So be assured, this slides is not created by the model. It is hand created by me, but I would love to take that help from the model to generate some of the slides. These are some of the other use cases, primarily talking about the audio, the coding for all the software engineers in the house. You may not write the code from the beginning. You may ask the model to generate the code for you, and it will generate the code for you, a standard templatized code, let's say a for loop or a while loop or whatnot. And then all you need to do is integrate with your business functionality of whatever you want to do. So if somebody is telling you that it's going to take them 10 days to write a code, tell them to use generative AI mechanism to write the code, and then suddenly that 10 days will shrink down to 5 days. Okay. We are seeing that kind of improvement in terms of the overall gain in the productivity. So feel free to use the buzzword generative AI when you are talking to a software engineer and then he or she says that, okay, it's going to take a lot of time. The new ways of generative AI coming up is videos. Now, video is a mechanism where we are going to see a lot of disruption because many of us are sort of a consumer of videos, whether it's about learning something, whether it's about listening somebody either via YouTube or whatnot, or TikTok for that matter. A lot of video creation has been happening without AI. Now that is going to change. Video generation is coming. It's not there yet. There are very few handful of companies have cracked that logic. They're experimenting with it, and many more companies are going to start developing certain models to support the video generation as a mechanism. Audio generation, whether it's audiobook, podcast, and whatnot, has gained traction. We would see more and more investment and more research go into that audio scenario. Primarily, people are looking for, when they say audio, they are looking for a certain tone, certain voice. They want to make sure that it's Ritesh who is speaking, then the voice of Ritesh is reflected and not Robert, right? So there are many aspects going into that music generation or text to speech and the aspect around it. Gaming is another one. There are a lot of game studios out in the world, a lot of gamers, including you and me, who may play the games. Now, many of that content, what you see within the game, quite likely you will see some of that already impact or effect into that games where that content is generated. It's not created by the gaming studios, but quite often we have started seeing that. Another area where I've seen a lot of use cases is synthetic data generation. It's where when you say why I need to create a synthetic data is kind of a dummy data. And quite often, many of the data do not exist in the world. Like COVID only existed once in a lifetime, right? If we consider our life. What if we want to sort of do a mimic of a COVID, that what happens when next wave of COVID or something like COVID would happen? We don't want COVID, next wave of COVID, just want to put it on the record. But what if the scientists want to simulate a COVID-like situation? And quite often you do not have enough data to generate that kind of situation. So that's where a synthetic data generation comes in picture. And in this scenario, the model, the generative AI model, is going to help you create some of this synthetic data generation. Language learning is another aspect of translating from one language to another language. I mean, India has like what, 27 or 28 official languages. But again, if you want to translate from Hindi to Kannada to Telugu and so forth, appropriate logic can be applied. I can go and on in the use case, but the interest of time, I'm going to just quickly move on. And we'll simply see this, some of these use cases, how it get applied in a various jobs aspect. Sales and the marketing I talked about is a very big domain where this generative AI will have an impact. Particularly, we are looking at marketing, whether it's about the efficient content creation, the enhanced use of data, search engine optimization, or if you want allow your users, let's say you are an e-commerce company, and as a part of that e-commerce functionality, you want your users to see certain product in the front and some of the other product at the end, based on maybe some logic you are applying, or maybe those product creators are giving you more money to promote your product. But that product discovery and the search personalization is completely done through the generative AI. Similarly, when we are looking at the sales, whether it's funneling the entire sales funnel from increasing your sales cycle, decreasing your sales cycle, or generating new leads, that can be done using generative AI as a functionality. We talked about customer service as a whole, but I'll give you just one example, and then you can read through many of the other experience of how the customer service will get impacted. But everyone do call some customer service hotline for either your bank or insurance company or whatnot. And typically we spend about 8 minutes, 10 minutes on an average to interact with the customer agent. Now that 10 minute, at the end of the 10 minutes, that agent has to at least give you a summary of what we talked. Because quite often they have to go through two things on their end. Maybe if it is about credit card, then they need to block the credit card and reissue a new one, and you need to accept that credit card. So there are two items on their end, one items on your end to summarize it, right? Now, typically, if this agent is doing the summary, quite often they are doing it manually because they are going through the call list or what happened during the call. And as you all know, most of these calls are being recorded. That means this recording is being converted into a transcript in real time. So the agent is going through the transcript, what happened in last 8 minutes or 10 minutes. And then they are summarizing that, okay, this is action item 1, this is action item 2, and this is action item 3. It typically takes about 30 seconds to 1 minute for a human to create that summary from that entire 8 minute, 10 minute call transcription. Now, what if we feed this entire transcription to this generative AI model? That model is taking that input of a 10-minute transcription, giving you a summary in 3 seconds, right? That these are the 3 bullet points this agent have to follow up with the customer. Now, suddenly that 30 seconds to a minute got shrunk into 3 seconds. Plus, quite often you may make mistakes. I mean, model do as well. We call it hallucination. But at least in this scenario, the agent has a bullet point identified in the second. Agent is saving another 57 seconds or whatnot, or let's call it a minute to round it up. If that agent is taking 40 calls a day, that means they are saving 40 minutes a day. And if you do an ROI based on the country where you are in, based on the amount of pay you are giving to this agent, you will see a clear ROI or return on investment on using some of this model for just summarizing. What it helps is it's free up the time of an agent. It also saves you the money at the end of the day. And it gives you a better customer experience because customer doesn't have to wait for that extra minute for that summary to happen. But there are many, many other aspects going on in this world where many new novel use cases are coming up and customers are solving those pain points. So you may say, hey, Ritesh, you talked about all of these use cases, but give me a concrete example, right? I want to see something. I'm a product manager. Assuming one of you are in the room, a product manager. But if you are not, how as a product manager, because I only have one example, I can go and on about 20, 30 different examples, but for sake of simplicity, if I'm a product manager, how that is going to impact my life as a product manager? So some of you who are in the room, who does product management as a part of your role, you go through many things like you do a market research, you do a product strategy, you interview the users, you do some competitive analysis, and you track the progress daily of how the product is going to work out. And then many more things go, which doesn't fit in my screen. So if you are a product manager and if you are looking to build a new product, how generative AI would help you? So let's assume that we are building a dog walking service, a simple example, right? Everyone would understand what dog walking service would be. But to start with, if you want to build this as an app where you allow the dog walkers and the dog owners to sort of connect, right? You are a techie, you are a program manager, product manager, and you want to build that marketplace for a dog walking service. So in that scenario, you need to pick a name, right? So there are many, before we get into the names, there are many things you need to do where as a part of list of activities, maybe you need to start with the name, you need to start with the vision document, the user stories, you need to identify what is the total addressable market, the serviceable market, total TAMs and so on, and many other functionality you as a product manager would need to write it down. First of all, you need to pick a name. So maybe what you do is you ask this model, hey model, I heard you are smart. I'm building a dog walking app. Can you give me 10 names which I can use? And in less than a second, the model is going to give you some funny names based on the dog walking services. Now it's up to you what you want to pick, right? You are the product manager, so you have that liberty and power. But at the same time, once you have that name identified, you need to create a vision document. Now, when you are creating a vision document, it's a lengthy document. It has so many things. It has like overall overview, the purpose, the features, what you want to build with, the user experience, what the branding would look like, and then many other things. You as a product manager, you are visioning this for your product. So you need to write that vision document. Here, I ask the model that can you create a vision document? And I have the vision document exactly for the dog. Like if we look and solve the features, that okay, dog owner profile and preference, create that as one of the items. Dog walker profile with expertise, because some dog walkers are expert in golden retriever versus some are expert in some of the other dog mechanism, right? So there are many other things this model created particularly to this dog walking service, right? It's not creating something for some of the other technical services what you want to build, but it's exactly giving you the answer for the dog walking aspect. But at the same time, you may say, hey, I do need a logo and I do need some images for this app. So can you create a robot pink dog walking in a garden in the 3D digital art? And boom, there we go. We have an image which got created exactly what we asked for. If I would replace pink to golden, probably it would change that color from pink to the golden dog, right? But we have that image which we can use on our website every day and use it as a logo as well if you prefer to, right? But what if I want to create a product roadmap? So now I have the app name, I have the vision document, I need to build a product. But before I build the product, I need to have a product roadmap. Can you create that product roadmap for me? And it gives us, and then for some reason, there is a, I forgot to copy paste. So the prompt says create a vision document. Actually, it should read as a create a product roadmap. So it's a copy paste error, not the model error. This is where the human comes in picture. If AI would have built this presentation, you would have not seen that error. Anyway, so here is the product roadmap for this dog walking app, and it's giving us by version. So for the initial launch version 1.0, you only go with a fixed set of features. For version 2.0, you go with something else, and then so forth. And it's giving you an entire roadmap of what it looks like for next 9 to 12 months. Now you have this roadmap created. You need to come up with a user story. User stories, those who are not in the product management or the product aspect, it's kind of bite-sized chunk, which your engineers or software engineers can use it and take it and build a product or the software out of it, right? So it's creating certain user stories based on the profile. So as a dog owner, I want to do this. As a dog walker, I want to do this, and then so forth. So in this case, I asked for 10 user stories, and it gave me a 5 user story for dog walker, the 5 user stories for dog the owner, right? And then so forth. So the point is, when you ask a model to do something, it will do it. It will follow your guideline and it will give you the answer. So suddenly, it typically takes a product manager. And again, I don't know if anybody is in the room as a product manager, but if I'm building out a product, a dog walking app, and if I want to do something like this, I actually did this in less than 5 minutes, right? So with the help of model. Now, to do this as a human, probably it will take me a week to come up with exactly like this, because vision document is something you want to think through, you want to build upon. It doesn't mean that you will use exactly what model is giving you, but that model is giving you a starting point, right? So initially, when I was saying AI will not replace human, AI will augment human. So here in this scenario, when that vision document was created, it doesn't mean that you as a product owner use that as is. You can remove few things, you can add few things, but at least it's giving you a starting point. And then our creative brains as a human is very, very big. And we can come up with a lot of creativity. This is just to inspire or to begin that creativity for our mind. So this is where I see in the next few years where we are going to use this generative AI as a mode of an augmentation. Okay. So you may ask what kind of tools and techniques are available. I mean, there are many out there. I mean, ChatGPT is kind of a word you have heard so many times. So I'm not going to mention ChatGPT, but some of the tools what I have used in current what you see here, right? Like creating those images, what you all see, and throughout the presentation, all the images what you have seen, including this tools image, is not something I have taken a picture or downloaded a picture from one of the websites. It's generated image, right? So many of these images are being generated using the model called Stable Diffusion model. A lot of text, what you see from the initial aspect of what we were talking about, the product manager, vision document, and the user stories and everything, was created using Anthropic's Claude model, right? So there are multiple models exist there. From image, we talked about Stable Diffusion. There is also something called Midjourney. Similarly, for text, there is Anthropic's Claude and Perplexity. You all have heard of ChatGPT, so I won't mention anything, but there are many, 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 many things are being available in the marketplace. Some are closed source, some are open source. For all of this, all you need to do is what we call prompt engineering. So what does it mean by prompt engineering? See here, what you see here, and then hopefully you can see, I'm pointing my finger, sorry. But this is a prompt where we ask the model that please generate the 10 user stories for this app. And what you see here is a response, right? So in this scenario, the prompt is what you as a user is inputting. And in this case, I've used Anthropic's model. That Anthropic's model is generating these answers in this white text, right? If you change the prompt, the answer will change. So that is what it's called prompt engineering, right? Quite often, there are many people now are acting as a prompt engineer, not actually a creator or a developer, to be honest. They are more of a prompt engineer. So you need to, as a user, you need to generate those prompts. So that is where your creativity comes in. But you can simply ask that question in that English language, assuming the model knows English language. If model also knows some of the local language, what you are used to, then you can feed that in the local language and model will generate the output in the appropriate language it supports. So that is called prompt engineering. But quite often, prompt engineering is just not enough. So what you may need to do is beyond prompt engineering. And then this is more of what I would call more of a science of generative AI. But when you are sending that prompt to the model without model learning anything, it's called zero-shot learning, right? So you're not telling model that learn something. Model, whatever it has learned, it's sending you that information. But these models are smart. It's like human. We are smart, right? If we've been told to do something 2 times, 3 times, and say, okay, do this, whatever I showed you 2 times, do it yourself the 3rd time, right? Quite often we tend to do that. Like Excel, if I don't know how to use doing a sum in Excel, like total in Excel, if somebody shows me how to use sum function in Excel, probably maybe I get intimidated at the very first time. Maybe second time I'll learn, okay, I need to put an equal sign, then sum, and then I need to select the cells which I want to do the sum or the total of it. That way, I as a human learn. So in this scenario, somebody who is showing me how to do the total in Excel, they are doing what we call the few shot learning. It's kind of they are showing me 2 shots or 2 examples, and then they are asking me to do the 3rd example on my own. Similarly, if model doesn't know something, like for example, model doesn't know how to do generate, we talked about that product manager example, but let's say model doesn't know how to create a user story. In this scenario, we feed model couple of user stories saying that, hey, this is a user story 1, this is a user story 2. Can you create a 3rd user stories similar to what I gave you, right? And the model will do it. It's called few shot learning. Now, that's on the zero shot or the few shot when we are interacting with a model like Anthropic's Claude, Short GPT, Stable Diffusion, and whatnot. Quite often, that's not enough because the accuracy what you get is not up to the mark of your enterprise or up to the mark what you have set. In that scenario, you need to do something called fine tuning. It's like you fine tune a model. Particularly in this scenario, there are other mechanisms available. One is called RLHF. It's called reinforcement learning through human feedback. There are other aspects of doing it using the classic fine tuning, where you freeze some of the weights of the model. Again, I'm going into science, but you freeze some of the weights of the model, and then you ask model, feed model more data, and tell model that, hey, since you don't know what my industry looks like, or since you don't know your model is trained in the US region, you don't know how it get operated in India because you are making so many mistakes. I'm going to feed you some data sets, which is for India market. And I want you to learn that and come up with an answer specifically for the India market. That is called fine tuning, right? And then there are multiple ways you can do a fine tuning. One is the classic fine tuning. The other is more of a PEFT. A new research came out of parameter efficient fine tuning. You can do a continuous training and continuous learning. And there are so many new aspects are coming up every day. Literally every day, something new has come up in this AI world. right? So the point I wanted to make is, at the end of the day, this is still new, right? So don't get intimidated by it. Every day something new is going to come, and we are in the very early stage of this entire cycle. If you think internet, when it came in, I'm old enough, and I saw the internet in the early 90s, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. We are still, early 90s is almost like 30 years away. We are still adopting internet is in a way, right? When we are looking at internet, e-commerce or some of the other aspects, call it an Uber, Ola, whatnot, all of these things are being adopted in our daily life because of internet, right? So it took 30 years for internet to get to a stage where it is today, and it's still growing. Similarly, AI, this is that first year of that AI, or maybe a second year, depends on who you ask. But we are in the very early cycle of an AI. This is going to grow tremendously, and it will have a direct impact on all of our life. But what does it mean is you need to be adaptable. You want that change to happen. You don't want to be the blocker. You want to be the embracer. So embrace it, adapt it. With that, I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you so much for your valuable
All right.
insights and your time, sir.
Thank you very much, team.
Yes, I hope you have a great day ahead.
Thank you.